blue hole is basically just a massive sinkhole in the ocean. Take over 100,000 years to form. You see, back in the ice ages...
What would you do if you looked into the ocean and saw a perfect dark circle staring back at you? That's the Great Blue Hole, an underwater pit so deep and dangerous that almost no one dares to enter. But when explorers finally sent cameras inside, they found a human skeleton preserved like time had stopped. And that was only the beginning. Stay with me, because what they discovered next will blow your mind. The Great Blue Hole. The first time you see the Great Blue Hole, it doesn't seem real. From above, the Caribbean Sea looks like a flat sheet of glass. Its turquoise and green colors make it shine. Then, out of the blue, the water suddenly drops into a perfect circle of darkness. It looks like someone cut a circle into the ocean with a huge compass. It's almost 1,000 feet across and looks almost too even to be real. It looks like a lost puzzle piece and draws your attention. Geologists even say that the form makes them wonder about things that simple erosion can't fully explain. For many years, the official story was simple. This place was a dry limestone cave during the last ice age, when sea levels were much lower. The cave roof finally gave way, making a round hole that later filled with water from the sea. It made sense. Every day, limestone caves fall apart, but the blue hole's size stands out. Not only is it a perfect circle, but at about 410 feet deep, it's about the same depth as other blue holes in the Caribbean. There are different islands and coastlines, but the formula is the same. Nature often does the same thing over and over again, but not this precisely, and not over hundreds of miles. Because these big holes are all the same size, it makes scientists wonder if something more dramatic shaped them. The shape isn't the only strange thing about it. The water starts to change as divers and ships go deeper into the blue hole. When you move about 200 feet away, the bright colors turn heavy blue, and it feels cooler, darker, and eerily quiet. Things get dangerous at 300 feet. The hydrogen sulfide layer is here. It's a thick, poisonous cloud that floats on top of the water like a fog. Divers tell others not to get too close to it by calling it the curtain of death. It burns when you touch it. It's deadly to breathe it in. When it goes through, even the metal on diving gear rusts. It's hard for light to get through the cloud, and things that live above it never get to the dark below. The blue hole became a very strange place, in large part because of this poisonous line. Under it, nothing lives. Not any fish, not coral. There are no bacteria that usually break down organic matter. It's kind of like a natural vault that is closed off from the rest of the world. Time moves in a different way, or not at all. And that vault-like quality is important when you think about the most shocking thing that the 2018 team found: a skeleton at the bottom that had not been touched. Most places underwater break down bones quickly. The bodies are spread out by currents, broken down by salt water, and carried away by sea creatures long before anyone can find them. But the blue hole is different from the rest of the ocean. The poisonous layer stops oxygen and living things from getting to the lower room. This makes it a world without sound or air, where not much changes. The body that was found didn't drift or break down during the trip. It just fell to the smooth floor and stayed there, preserved in the same strange way that stalactites have been frozen in place for thousands of years. The fact that this is so rare makes it so interesting. Skeletons of people who lived thousands of years ago have been found in blue holes in the Bahamas, but only after careful cave dives. There are no caves in the Great Blue Hole. There is poisonous gas at the bottom of this vertical shaft that goes straight down. The fact that the remains of a modern diver were still whole after possibly decades shows how well this environment keeps things that fall into it. It's like a locked time capsule in nature. Nothing breaks, nothing moves, and nothing gets out. This same toxic layer is also what shocked scientists when they saw footage from the dive in 2018. They looked at more than just bones. They were looking at a moment that had been frozen in time and was safe because of science that worked like a force field. The skeleton made people wonder about a lot more than just who the person was. It made scientists think about what else might be hidden in that pitch-black space, and whether the blue hole holds clues not only to current tragedies, but also to events from the past. The preservation conditions became even clearer as the submarine went deeper. The walls were not the rough rock you'd expect from a cave fall. They were smooth, almost like they had been polished. This smoothness helps explain why the bones weren't all over the place. There are no sharp edges or strong currents. There is only a quiet, still room where even dust settles down. The scene seems staged because of the creepy calm at the bottom. It's like a room has been waiting for someone to open the door and see what's been inside. The blue hole is one of the few places on Earth that can keep things in such perfect condition. Most places are in a hurry to get rid of proof. Everything breaks down in salt water. Heat speeds up the process, and living things eat anything organic long before scientists can get to it. But here, the ocean's most dangerous area turns into a museum by mistake. So seeing a skeleton is more than just a sad memory of a diving accident. It's also a clue, a place to start, and a warning sign all at the same time. That question brings us right to the next mystery. The moment when the cameras on the 2018 trip caught something even stranger than the skeleton. What the cameras actually captured. The mood changed as soon as the submarine went over the edge of the Great Blue Hole. From above, the bright colors, clear sunlight, and calm waves all looked like they were safe. But as the sub went down, the light went down like a knob that makes things darker. The water was a soft blue at first, but it quickly turned darker, like how the sky gets darker before a storm. The divers knew they were leaving the world they knew and going to a place that didn't really feel like Earth. At first, the change happened slowly. The coral walls could still be seen, and small groups of fish swam by. The water moved slowly but steadily. At about 200 feet, though, the calm began to fade. It got colder, heavier, and weirdly empty in the water, as if life knew it shouldn't go any deeper. The lights from the submarine moved forward, but the darkness moved back even more. The space around them became so dark and far away that even the cameras had trouble capturing it. Then, the moment everyone was ready for and dreading came. The dangerous hydrogen sulfide layer showed up at about 300 feet. It didn't move around as fog does. It just hung there, thick and still, like a ghostly wall that went around the whole hole. The light hit it and spread out, giving the whole cloud a soft gray sheen. Going through it was like going to a different world. Everything on top of the layer was colored. Everything below it turned black. Not as dark as the ocean, not dark at night. The headlights of the sub were swallowed up by a thick, suffocating dark. As soon as the sub broke through the toxic layer, the cams started to flicker. Signals were jumbled. The video had some problems. It was hard for even the most powerful sensors to see in the dark. The team had to rely on Sonar, which showed the walls as moving blue lines, since they could hardly see anything else. That's where something strange started to show up. The sonar showed long, straight lines and repeated shapes instead of random rock formations. It looked like the walls weren't carved by water, but had been made on purpose. Straight ridges went down in vertical stripes, and flat platforms showed up at regular intervals, like the steps on a stairway made for giants. Even the experts who were watching the feed on the surface were scared by how strange it was. But nothing at all had prepared them for the next thing the cams caught. The lights finally reached the smooth, pale bottom when the submarine got to the lower room. In places, it looked more like a floor than real ground. Right there in the middle of that creepy silence was the skeleton of a person, in perfect condition, not at all bothered. The rib cage was still whole. The arms and legs were still straight in line with the back. Chemicals that had been on the bone for years had fused even parts of the diver's gear together. If it had been in a normal underwater setting, animals, currents, or the body's natural breakdown process would have quickly broken it down. But nothing touched it down here. It wasn't moved. It didn't change. When archaeologists watched the video, they were shocked by how full the skeleton was. They knew right away that this diver had died because the environment below the hydrogen sulfide layer was poisonous and had no air. It wasn't like the body came from somewhere else. It hadn't been pulled. It was still in good shape. It just sank, settled, and stayed there in quiet, like something that stays still in a vault that is locked from the outside. The diver probably lost their way in the toxic layer, fell below it, and never made it back up. This was something that the bones told us. As if that find wasn't scary enough, the cameras on the submarine soon showed something even scarier that made the whole mission feel even worse. There were more bones down there than just this one. Later, Branson said that the team had seen 2 of the 3 people who were thought to have disappeared in the blue hole. In other words, the skeleton wasn't a rare mistake. It made me remember how dangerous this place really is. A place where mistakes don't get fixed, and where the environment itself traps anything that falls in. Multiple bodies found in the blue hole supported what scientists had always thought, but had never seen so clearly. The hole is both a graveyard and a time capsule. It takes more than lives. It keeps them as proof. Later, when engineers and geologists watched the video again, they saw details that made the scene even scarier. The walls in the video didn't just look flat. They looked like they had a shape to them. Long cuts went down in lines that were very straight. Inside a hollow tower, terraces went all the way around the inside, making rings. The stalactites that hung around the room were the most shocking thing of all. Even though stalactites only grow in dry caves, these ones were huge, sharp, and undamaged. This means that the whole chamber was once very high above sea level, and the water must have rushed over it very quickly. The scene was like a puzzle because of the well-preserved human remains, the impossible placement of the stalactites, and the geometric designs on the walls. The skeleton proved that the blue hole could stop time. The blue hole seemed to be hiding more than just current tragedies, though, based on what was around it. It made experts wonder what else might be able to be saved in the total darkness where the camera couldn't reach. The answer to that question leads straight to the next mystery. The part of the video that showed what the blue hole might be hiding under its flat floor, and why the area around the skeletons doesn't act like a normal cave at all. Why the skeleton survived. Nature was kind, so the skeleton at the bottom of the great blue hole didn't make it. It was able to stay alive, because the conditions down there are some of the worst on Earth. They are harsh enough to kill anything that comes in, but just right enough to protect anything that falls through the dangerous barrier. In a way, it's like the blue hole is both destroying and protecting at the same time. And to know why those bones didn't move, you need to know what happens when something goes into that deep, poisonous room. A person's body doesn't last long in normal ocean water. Fish break it up. Crabs spread out the bones, and germs finish what's left. The remains are moved around by currents, and after a few weeks, there's almost nothing left that can be recognized. In the Great Blue Hole, though, the rules are very different below the layer of hydrogen sulfide. Up there is nothing that would normally destroy remains. No air means there are no germs. Without air, things don't break down quickly. And since there is no oxygen, there are no sea animals looking for food.
Underneath that, there's no oxygen, no life. And down there we found conchs and conch shells and hermit crabs that had fallen into the hole.
The currents slow down too, making the water feel thick and still. This is why scientists say the body part is frozen in time. It didn't break down. It didn't move. It didn't get spread out. It didn't move from where it fell. Underwater, this kind of protection is very rare. Usually, cold temperatures stop decay, like when bodies are stuck in mountains or lakes that are frozen. Chemicals, not ice, are used by the blue hole to make its own kind of fridge. The layer of toxic gas cuts off the lower room from everything it needs to stay alive. This makes it a silent vault, where nothing can die and decay can't happen. It's not just oxygen that the hydrogen sulfide layer blocks. It stops life itself. The ocean works properly above it. The water is full of microorganisms, fish move, and coral grows. But below it? Nothing. Not a single fish will make it. Crabs can't get to the bottom. Worms that live in the ocean and generally clean up dead things can't get through. Even germs move away because they need oxygen to work. It's like nature put up a fence around the lower room to keep things safe. Anything could fall in, but nothing could get out. The skeleton is safe because this barrier keeps it out like an unseen shield. This line is called a chemical curtain by scientists, but it works more like a guardian. Anything that goes through is covered in harmful particles that stop decay right away. That's one reason why the diving gear was still stuck to the bones. Everything settled down and stayed put because of the chemical layer. It was almost like the blue hole put a protective shell around the dead bodies. This is also why ancient remains found in other blue holes in the Caribbean are so well preserved. These places stop time in a way that regular oceans can't. But the blue hole has always been able to keep things in great shape, even before any modern divers went in. During the last ice age, thousands of years ago, this huge hole wasn't even half full of water. The cave was dry and stood high above the water. Stalactites, which are sharp rock shapes that only form when water drips from cave ceilings into the air, are all over the walls as proof.
Stalactites can only form because water is dripping down stone. And so we know that this was a big dry cave, and it was during a really prolific era.
Stellacite can't grow underwater, especially not more than 300 to 400 feet down. They can only form on land that is dry. What this means for science is very important. The Great Blue Hole was once part of a huge cave system that was dry for a very long time. Then, when the Ice Age ended, the sea level rose and flooded the whole area quickly enough to leave the stalactites alone. If the water had come up slowly, the waves and sand would have broken them up or made them smooth. The water must have come in quickly, though, because the stalactites are sharp and haven't been touched. When the cave filled, it made a room that couldn't be opened. This made it a natural trap for anything that went down there. Everything got trapped in a bubble where no new oxygen could get in and no living things could live. That's the same sealed area where the skeleton is now. Safe because things haven't changed much in thousands of years. When archaeologists watched the video, they knew right away that they weren't just seeing a sad death. They were also seeing a place on Earth that is almost never seen before. It's one thing to find a skeleton in a cave, but it's a whole other thing to find one underwater that looks like it was just put there yesterday. This video was a unique chance to study how human remains behave in very low oxygen environments, which are like time machines undersea. Researchers also got a better idea of the dangers divers face when they explore these areas, thanks to the video. Under the toxic layer, even expert divers can't find their way. Things break down. Visibility goes away. One mistake is enough to kill you. The skeleton wasn't just a science find. It also showed how quickly things can go wrong in the Caribbean's most dangerous underwater structure. What the footage revealed beyond the skeleton. The pictures that were taken around the skeleton were even weirder than the skeleton itself. At this point, it looked like a terrible accident that had been stopped in time, with one diver lost and only found by chance. But as experts looked at the video frame by frame, they saw things that didn't fit the normal explanations of a cave collapse or a natural sinkhole. It wasn't just deep in the blue hole. It was strange in ways that shouldn't have been possible. It began with the walls. When the sonar scans were improved and cleaned up, patterns showed up, which wasn't expected. It wasn't just random erosion marks or broken rock surfaces. There were straight lines going down the walls that looked like they were almost designed. All the way around the shaft, they were smooth, spaced out evenly, and the same. In the spaces between those lines, there were terraces, which were flat, repeated ledges that went down at perfect intervals. Caves don't naturally form in this way. That exact shape can't be made by even the strongest currents. Geoscientists had a disagreement about these geometric shapes. Some people have said that natural forces in the past were much more violent than we thought, able to tear land masses apart so violently that they left scars that are symmetrical. Some people said the patterns looked too planned and organized, like the land had fallen in layers, like how floors drop in a building. It wasn't like the walls fit the usual story of gentle caves slowly filling with water over thousands of years. They gave hints of something much wilder, faster, and sharper. Huge stalactites, some of which were over 10 feet long and still pointed straight down, were seen on the cams hanging from the walls. These shapes can only form in dry caves on land, and they do so very slowly, about an inch every 100 years. It wasn't a surprise to find them 300 to 400 feet below the surface. It was amazing to find them so well kept. The stalactites should have broken, worn away, or vanished if the sea levels had slowly risen. But they were sharp, smooth, and not broken. One thing that meant was that the cave didn't slowly fill with water. It quickly flooded, a lot faster than most models of sea level say. It looked like the ocean had eaten the stalactites up right away, sealing them in place before moving water could damage them. It looked like the mark of sudden flooding that was strong enough to bury whole regions at once. The team wasn't expecting that kind of proof, but the sonar still had more shocks to offer. As the submarine sank to the bottom, it began to look under the flat floor where the body was lying. The sonar scans showed that some areas were hollow, spaces, tunnels, whole rooms that go out horizontally under the sea floor. There were no small cracks or air holes here. There were wide paths, and some of them were even big enough for a person to walk through during dry times. They went out hundreds of feet, making a maze that was hidden by the sand. It was a big find, because these rooms had been locked up since the Ice Age. They had not been touched, not a current, no animals, no hands at all. Scientists think that there might be materials inside these sealed holes that are different from anything found on the surface. Pollen grains from forests that don't exist anymore, spores from plants that lived during the Ice Age, or even insects frozen in an oxygen-free atmosphere could still be inside. For experts, this is the kind of time capsule they dream of finding. In other parts of the Caribbean, blue holes have already found ancient human remains, some of which are thousands of years old. The Lucayan people buried their dead in deep blue holes, where the chemistry kept their bones in good shape, just like in the Great Blue Hole. People may have lived on the land that is now underwater, and their skeletons, tools, and other artifacts may be locked away in those lower rooms. It didn't show bones, but it did show room. And space that has been shut off for thousands of years almost always has surprises. Now, scientists are wondering if the Great Blue Hole hides signs of early humans who died out when the sea level rose at the end of the Ice Age. What else could be deeper inside if the skeleton we saw lived because the poison layer froze it in place? When the cave first flooded, what else could have been brought into those tunnels? With this video, the Blue Hole goes from being a dangerous place to dive to a historical record. Researchers now have to rethink how fast the ancient flood happened, how violent the fall had to be, and how many stories could be hidden in those chambers that haven't been touched. At first, the modern skeleton was the main focus, but it was soon clear that it wasn't the most important thing that the cams caught. The answer to that question goes directly to the final revelation, the mystery that turns the Great Blue Hole from an underwater wonder to a message from the past. The skeleton that became a warning. The skeleton on the Great Blue Hole's floor wasn't just a sad memory of a diver who died and never came back to the surface. It grew into something bigger, like a letter stuck in the ice of the ocean. When scientists found out how well the remains had been kept, they realized that this one recent death was linked to something much older and scarier. In the past, when the cave system was still above water, the same deadly chamber that trapped a trained explorer could have swallowed whole villages. It's a scary look into the past that shows people from different times were in the same danger, the same fall, and maybe even the same sudden flooding that turned this cave into an underwater tomb. That's why researchers didn't think it was strange that someone had died. They knew the Blue Hole was dangerous already. What shocked them was what the skeleton showed about the place where it was found. This proved that the Blue Hole doesn't just kill, it also keeps. Anything that gets to the bottom is protected in a way that is almost hard to find anywhere else underwater. Fully protected situations. Not enough air. No decay. Do not bother. In this way, the skeleton showed that the Blue Hole is not just a pit. It's a natural archive that keeps anything that falls into it, whether by chance or on purpose. And everything changed after that. Anything or anyone from thousands of years ago could be waiting in the dark if a swimmer from the 20th century lived in this state for years without being touched. The Blue Hole went from being a single diving story to a mystery box full of old history all of a sudden. It's possible that deeper layers hold bones, artifacts, tools, or signs of cultures that died out long before written records were made. Along the Caribbean coast, whole chapters of human history may be buried under a layer of pollution, perfectly preserved but secret. This is not a guess. There are already blue holes in the Caribbean that show this to be true.
The Great Blue Hole is the largest and most famous ocean blue hole in the world. It's 1,000 feet across, 400 feet deep.
Scientists found human skulls that were more than 10,000 years old in the Bahamas, mostly around Abaco Island. The bones were so complete that fingerprints could be studied on them. They found fossils of alligators that had been gone from the area for a very long time. They found shells of huge tortoises from a species that no longer lives. Everything was kept the same way the diver's skeleton was, buried under a layer of poison, sealed from time and not breaking down. That much history can be stored in smaller blue holes. Just think what could be in the Great Blue Hole, which is the biggest and most famous of them all. It is in the middle of an old landscape that was home to animals during the Ice Age, early travelers, and whole coastlines that are now underground. There are many signs that the Blue Hole is more than just a place to dive. It leads to a world that was lost when the ocean came in too fast for anyone to get away. The Great Blue Hole still guards its secrets, but we've only scratched the surface. Like, share, and subscribe, and click the next video appearing on your screen to dive even deeper into the unknown.